Hey there, welcome to Woman and Home. I am the editor, and this month you'll have seen that we have the amazing Penny Lancaster on our cover. She was absolutely brilliant on our shoot, and I am delighted to say that she's joining us today to talk. Everything is on the table. She'll talk about anything. She's brilliant, is Penny. Grab your copy, and I think Penny should be with us now. Hi, Penny, are you there?
Hi.
Hey, lovely to see you again. How are you?
Really good, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. And first, there's lots of thank yous actually, because I wanted to say thank you for being our cover star, because you were such good fun. You did so much for us on the day. Did you enjoy it?
I absolutely loved it. It was such a pleasure. Please have me back. No, I
We
really
will.
did. I mean, the day was absolutely wonderful. The whole team, photographer, hair, makeup, like styler, everybody involved was just so wonderful. It was the most pleasurable day, and we had great weather. Yeah, it was just amazing. I loved it.
It was so brilliant. And of course, we bonded over our goats, didn't we? Because you have
Yeah.
goats and I have goats. I feel like we bonded over them somehow.
Yeah, we got three goats, three horses, and three doggies.
God, going
And
away
lots of
is quite
chickens.
lots of chickens. Going away is quite the drama, isn't it? To be honest
Oh,
with
I know. Thank God for Grandma, my
you.
mum.
So I wanted to talk to you about a few things. Firstly, of course, your memoir is out, which is brilliant. I've read it. For anyone who hasn't read it yet, you must get your copy. Can you kind of give us some of the edited highlights, some of the and talk us through it really?
Well, it really is a pinch me moment because, when I look at myself as a younger Penelope, as I was known at school, I'm dyslexic. So it was in the time when dyslexia wasn't a thing. People didn't recognise that children learn differently, adults learn differently. It's very much just like you learn this way or no way. And even when my dad got me an English tutor to help me with my exams, the tutor said, "You're just wasting your time and money. She'll never improve. She'll never make anything of herself." So it was just, I always felt like I was going to hit a dead end and there was going to be no future. And it was only until I got into modeling and then I did a 2-year diploma in photography, and then I realized that I have different communication skills. I tap into other areas that, there's skill sets and talents that were up sort of unnoticed when I was at school. So it gave me a different avenue, and then through meeting Rod, he introduced me into other areas that I just sort of shunned from, whether it's public speaking or being on TV. I thought I wouldn't be able to do that because I wouldn't be able to read from a teleprompter or that kind of thing. But you know, practice and taking the shame away from dyslexia and the stigma, and just talking about it and just go, look, that is what I am. But actually, I have strengths that other people don't have, and I find that I believe that I have value, and I think that's the important thing. And now I've got a book. Oh my God. And the biggest challenge was actually, of course, delving back into the past and going through some traumatic things that I went through was difficult. But all in all, I think the hardest process for me was reading the the audio version of my book. Um, my book is actually in a format which is very easy or much easier for dyslexic people to read. The font that I chose, the gaps between each word, the gaps between each line just makes it easier for me to read. So I hope that other dyslexics will find it easier to read. But but I know that lots of people like to do the audio. But my fear of reading brings on my hyperhidrosis. Just thinking about it. Um, but I managed to get through the reading process too. I mean, it probably took a day longer than most people, but I felt like it was a real accomplishment at the end of that.
And the process, I mean, everyone thinks there's a book in them, don't they? I think that's often the case. Whether we want to read it or not is another matter. In your case, we absolutely do. But the process of writing a book Can you talk us through that? I think people are really interested in how that works.
Yeah, so not obviously not being an author, that's not my living. I had a story to tell, and I'm very passionate and honest about my truth. And what I've found with the way I've been able to connect with people through Loose Women or interviews is the amazing response I've had from members of public reaching out to me, wanting to sort of express their thanks for the work that me and many other women do towards menopause, speaking out about symptoms, and whether it's talking about dyslexia or whether it's talking about bullying or IVF, all of this sort of subject matters so many people have resonated with. So I thought, well, I could tell those stories in one place and in far more detail, and maybe that can reach others. It will help me, but in turn, most importantly, help other people recognize that they're not alone. Because I think a lot of things you go through, you just think, oh God, why me? Why am I suffering like this? And not realizing that, so many others go through similar journeys. But how was I going to bring it all into a book and have that kind of like natural sort of synergy, I suppose, and the arc that goes through storytelling, bringing it all into full circle. So I worked with an amazing ghostwriter, and we would sit for like 4 hours at a time and just tell my story. And then we'd go back and forth, and then she would sort of write a section, and then I would read it, and then we would go over it together, and we'd go back and forth, and I'd even change like one or two words, and then we'd be like, well, you did actually say that when we chatted. I said, yeah, I know I might have said that, but now I'm reading it off the page. It's not telling the story how I remember it now. And so it was a really long process, and sort of understanding the different mediums and how they get your message across. So it was a lot of back and forth, and just making sure that it was my voice, even if the person doesn't buy the actual audio version. I wanted people to hear my voice coming off the page. And what's lovely is I have a group of girlfriends we call each other the Secret Circle. They secretly got together before I got married and arranged this dance that they finally taught me in the end, but it was all behind closed doors. And they've all purchased a copy of my book because they live all over the place. And we haven't actually all got together yet, which we plan to do in a few weeks. And they're all reading the book, and we've got this like WhatsApp group, we're all on there together, and they've like sent photographs with them with the book, and they're going, oh my God, I'm on chapter 5. What about the bit where the da-da-da-da? And the other one's going, don't tell me I'm not on that chapter yet. Don't do the spoiler. So it's so lovely. And they're all said that it just feels like you're sitting in my room, in my living room, sitting with me, chatting to me. So that was the real authenticness that I wanted to be able to deliver. So I'm really happy with that.
And I think that's what I love so much about this book, is just quite how relatable it is. And in fact, the shoot was the first time I've met you, and you felt very much like the girl next door. You could easily chat to you. You made the room very, very easy, which isn't always, the case, is it? And I think that comes across in your book. And a lot of what you say is incredibly relatable. You talk about the menopause, you talk about how a few years back you didn't know what was going on, and you had to go and get help for that. Can you talk us through that time?
Yeah, it was just as the lockdown period started. Rod and I were out in Los Angeles. He was touring in Vegas, and his shows were being cancelled because of this talk of this virus. And our boys were in England, and they were due to join us in Florida for Easter. So I just decided, look, I'm going to pull them out a few weeks early. There were so many kids not going into school at the time, they were falling sick. And I just thought, I don't want to risk the chance of them getting ill, not being able to fly out and join us. So we all met finally in Florida. And I started having these symptoms, which I initially thought was COVID. So I was getting these horrible hot flushes. And one of the symptoms to look out for with COVID was a high temperature. So then I panicked, and I thought, we're seeing all the scary images on TV of people in hospital beds with oxygen masks. There were no tests at the time. So I was really concerned that I might pass it to Rod or the children. But what was odd was I would get the extreme, like, hot temperatures, but then I'd be freezing cold. So it'd be in the middle of the night. I'd be on top of the sheets to try to cool down. And then I'd be lying there freezing and put the covers back on. And I thought, well, that doesn't seem like one of the symptoms. But I didn't have anything to kind of compare it to. I'd never heard of the menopause symptoms. I'd heard of the odd woman in the past talking about menopause, and the phrase of like, oh, she's going through her change, or, you know, but don't talk about it, don't bring it up, because it was almost like embarrassing, just sort of leave her alone, and poor woman, leave her to suffer. So I hadn't really considered that might be what was happening to me. But then we flew back eventually to the UK to carry on with the lockdown process. And I thought that the pressure of the lockdown, you know, homeschooling my two boys, not really knowing when this was going to end, I thought that was the accumulation of what was going on in my mind that was making me feel so crazy. But I was always the steady one, the one, you know, the kind of rock, the one that kind of forges through, head above the water. People would come to, family members, whatever, like, Penny will have the solution, Penny can fix this, that kind of thing. And I couldn't help myself. I couldn't fix me. I was in this spiral of this torment, that of all these side effects, which I didn't realize was menopause. And then finally, it was one dinner time. I'd been calling for the kids and Rod to come down for dinner, and they finally walked in the kitchen. They were all arguing, and I just snapped. I threw the dinner on the plates across the kitchen. They smashed against the walls, and I just crumpled in a mess, you know, burst into tears and shaking. And, you know, Rod said, like, boys, go off into the other room, give mum a minute. And he just came and sat on the floor with me with his arms around me. Said, darling, what's wrong? What's wrong? He knew it was more than just they were late for dinner. And I said, I don't know, I just can't cope. I feel like I'm falling apart, and I can't explain it. And I was doing loose women, and we were doing the Zoom calls because of the distancing rules. And I was explaining to them my symptoms, and they went, Penny, you're not depressed. Because the problem was, I eventually went to my GP, and he put me on antidepressants. But those antidepressants didn't help. And then I thought I was really going crazy. Like, well, if these aren't helping, what the hell's happening to me? But they went, no, you're not depressed. Speak to the specialist about menopause, which I was fortunate enough to get an appointment on Zoom. And she made it all completely clear. And every symptom I had, she went, tick, tick, tick. You're perimenopausal. And this is like throwing yourself into the fire. You know, your head is in the oven, kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily creep up on people slowly. Sometimes it can hit you like a runaway train. And she advised that I slowly come off the antidepressants, and then finally, get on board with taking HRT. And it completely changed my whole life. I mean, talk about reset button. I felt like the old Penny was back, my spark was back. And then it gave me like an extra inner strength, a more of a determination. And then that's when I decided to sign up and train as a police constable, as a special. As mad as that sounds. I really thought I kind of had my life back, and I could do anything now.
Which is amazing. And there's a few things that you said that I wanted to pick up on. You're incredibly determined, and this touches on kind of your relationship with Rod, actually, because clearly from the very beginning he was massively supportive, and you can see through the book and all the stuff that you've posted online that he's so supportive of your book. And you told me earlier that he's taking the book everywhere. He's in Vegas at the moment, taking the book everywhere, isn't he?
Yeah, he flew off. Sorry, it's my doggy Lily. Lily's okay. He flew off the week before my book was published, and I had a copy that had been sent to me in advance, and so he went off to the airport with it, and he messaged me as soon as he got to Los Angeles and said, like, I'm almost halfway through. I love it. It's warm. It's honest. It's beautiful. and it's touching me in, that I just didn't imagine it would. So that was like such a compliment for me, and he keeps me in tabs with what stage is at, and yeah, so that's adorable.
And it's so lovely because you talk in your interview about his support, but also the fact that you are a determined person. You've always worked, and you continue to do so, and that actually that's what he finds really attractive in you. And like you say, you work for the police force, which is absolutely incredible. I mean, in awe of that. Can you tell us a bit more about why and how much you do for them?
It's a wonderful position to be in, to be able to volunteer. Most of all the volunteers, the special constables, have 9 to 5 jobs, and then in their spare time they give up that time, 200 hours a year, to volunteer, because the police force are always looking for more recruits, more women in particular. So I was involved in a TV show and got to know what it was like on the front line, and really felt like it would be a place for me, somewhere that I could offer what I my skill sets, my experience as a mother, because a lot of the time you're dealing with young people, with victims of women that have had to deal with a sexual assault, or very vulnerable people that want to take their life. And you're not just running around after criminals. You're dealing with face to face, on foot, with the members of the public. And I love that interaction. And I think I've my confidence has grown so much in the last 10 years, I would say. I think I was always holding on to that schoolgirl that was told she would never make anything of herself, and because of dyslexia, that I've you know which I didn't realize it was, but because of my difficulties, I thought there'd always be barriers, and there'd be things that, well, I can't do that and I can't do this. But at 40, when I was diagnosed, when my son Alistair was 10 and he was diagnosed, I went for the test to reassure him that it's okay, and if mummy comes away flying colours, as I did, I've been able to forge my way and make a path for myself, and you will too. And so it was just the determination to not let things get in your way, and we've all got something to give.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things I really want to ask you is, do you get recognised when you're on the beat?
Occasionally, you do get the odd like double take kind of thing, um, but most often than not, members of public see the police force as just a uniform.
Yeah.
They just see an officer. They don't see behind the uniform. They don't recognise that it's, they might know the difference between a male and a female officer, but 9 out of 10, they're not going to consider that that's a family person. That that's someone's uncle or brother or sister or auntie, or the public of the police of the public. We're all the same. I just go and put a uniform on once a week.
You talk about your children, and you're as passionate about being a mum as you are everything else that you do. And it's a question I often ask myself as a working mum, always working full time since having children. Can women, do you think, have it all? We have the job, we want to be able to earn the same. We still don't, sadly, as men. But there aren't so many CFO women. We know it's still a battle that's ongoing for women. But can we have it all? Are we just doing the juggle every day?
I believe that if you have your mind set on something and you've got something to offer, then don't deprive your community, your workforce, just because you're a woman, because you're going to take leave and have a child, because you're going to go through menopause. I think so many workplaces, luckily now, have got lots of policies in place to support women. I know in the police force, I see it every time when I go in, that there's a mental health area, people you can talk to. There's support groups for menopause. Of course, you get your time off work when you have a child. I think the only challenging thing I see currently with women is because they see that there is a future for them. They come out of school, they've got their qualifications, they're driven, and they see their sights set high on a career. When they start climbing that ladder and they're parallel to their male counterparts, I think it's very difficult for them to feel that they will need to drop out to have a child, and be able to come back into the workplace and be at that same level playing field that they were before. Because a lot of the time, I would imagine there'll be someone right behind you, in the case of the workplace, supporting women, and offering all those opportunities that they need. And I think too often than not, women tend to forget that while they're striving in their careers, there's still that time clock, the body clock of fertility. We're still all going to hit 35 and have our fertility opportunities drop considerably, and so that's not going to ever change. So I really feel that needs to be highlighted in one of the NHS medical health checks when you're 21, I believe, when you kind of go and get a smear test. I think there needs to be a conversation about fertility, and just to project those statistics of 35, so that women, while they're looking ahead for their career opportunities, they've also got that in mind, so they don't get to the point where it could be too late.
I mean, you talked about children, didn't you? And as much as having more, did you want more?
Oh, I could have had a nursery of kids, I think. I love them. But what's wonderful is I've got grandkids now, coming into our lives. I don't see them as much as I'd like to, because mostly they're in America and we're here in the UK, but we're all getting together at Christmas. And I think maybe if Rod and I had started earlier, we might have had one other. We did talk about adopting at one time in our lives, but we've got our hands full with all of our work opportunities that come our way, and finding that balance, I think, is really important between family time as a group, individual time with one-on-one with the children, and then of course husband time. It's and then pockets of time for your friends and work. So it's a fine balance. You can't always keep everyone happy all of the time, but I try and do my best.
Don't we all? Husband time. In your interview, you talked about the upside down kiss. Could you explain some more?
Yeah, it was a few weeks into my relationship with Rod, and he was giving me a tour around his house. We'd been in conversation while he was in America and I was in England about his love for art and his collection of pre-Raphaelite. So he said, I'll show you some of the artwork that I have. I would only be looking at it in books, and there they were on the wall. So we were going around the house, and we ended up in the bedroom where there are a few beautiful pieces. And then he said, sit down on the bed. I was like, ooh. So I sat down, and then he moved around to the other side of the bed, and I was like, where's he going? And then he said, lay back down. So I laid back. So now my head is on the other side where he is. And then he leant over the top of me and kissed me on my lips. So it was like, opposite. His nose was on my chin, sort of thing, not nose to nose. And then he stood back up and he said, come on then, I'll show you the rest of the artwork. And I was like turned to jelly and got an excited buzz, and I thought, wow, he knows how to woo a woman. And that was my upside down, our first kiss.
I know, I like that. Is that how you keep it all? Because of course you're apart from each other quite a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, but in a way, I think that keeps it alive. I think the energy and the kind of missing and longing for one another. I could kind of get on with my stuff, and he gets on and does his job, and then we come together. Like, oh, I'm joining him with the boys at a half-term school holiday down in South America in Buenos Aires. He has 3 shows down there towards the end of his tour. And then we're going to have a little sort of week family time together before we head back and then we're back on in England together as a family. So it's nice that we have those sort of pockets where we can really think and appreciate one another when we have that time apart.
They say absence makes the heart grow fond, doesn't it? I suppose it keeps it fresh,
It
seeing each
does.
other every now. It does. I just want to backtrack slightly. We talked about relatability, and anybody that's seen the magazine already will have seen that I can take the mickey out of myself. I'm over a foot shorter than you, and the image that's been printed in the magazine still makes me laugh, because you were also wearing 3-inch heels in there, so it's not to me. But when you walk into the room, you have a massive presence. You're a model. You're incredibly beautiful, and what I thought was astonishing when we were talking was the fact that actually you have your own insecurities too, and you touched on them earlier, and that might surprise some people. People will look at you and think, she's got absolutely everything, what more could she want? But actually women are really hard on themselves, aren't they? And those insecurities I thought were incredibly relatable. You were very honest about them, which is unusual too. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, I think my body image and my relationship with food has always been a big challenge for me. When I was at school, I was the tallest in my class. That's taller than the girls and the boys. So I felt like I stood out. Really tall and skinny, I'd wear layers of clothing to make myself appear to be bigger. And then when I left school, I used that to my advantage and got into the modeling industry. But then when I was modeling, I was told I wasn't skinny enough, and then would like starve myself, and before a shoot I would take these salt tablets to reduce the amount of water retention on the surface of the skin to appear skinnier than I was. So that whole kind of, who am I, where am I, you know, what's the healthy weight to be, wasn't the question. I couldn't, I feel like I could be myself, and that sort of followed me really. Just working on the book, it's been a nerve-wracking and deep soul-searching project that I feel that's been for me a great accomplishment, and I'm proud of it. But along the way, I've needed comfort, and I've eaten way more than I needed, and it's just part of my coping mechanism. And you know, I kick myself for it because I work out and I eat healthy food. I just sometimes eat too much, or then I have like cheat days where I think, oh well, I deserve it, you know, that kind of thing. You know, and I'm like hanging on to this kind of roll of fat around my tummy, and then I put on weight around my face, and I think, oh God, look at this and this, and um, I don't mind so much the wrinkles that sort of comes with age, and there's not much you could do with that, you know. I'm a person that likes to express myself, and that shows in my face, you know, surprise and happiness and that kind of thing. So it's what I can do to change myself naturally is what kind of bothers me, because I know that I could eat less and eat more healthily, and I know I could work out more. It's just like, just when you're getting older and you're having to deal with like joint pains, like, and back pains or whatever, then you know, you're also having to work harder at you know, combating the weight that you naturally put on through menopause, through having 2 children, and that kind of thing. But yeah, and then you know, I've got my ongoing hyperhidrosis, which causes embarrassment because you have to shake people's hands and they're like wet, and always really like have to make excuses for it. But I feel like the more I talk about those things, the easier it is, though. You know, whether it's dyslexia, whether it's having a weight issue or embarrassing sweaty hands, I feel the more you talk about it, the more you realize that other people have the same things, and much worse. So I've got a lot to be thankful and grateful for. So I don't kind of hang on to those insecurities, but yeah, it's not necessarily what people see on the surface.
Well, I'm going to bring this to a close now, Penny. You've been absolutely amazing, and I thank you on behalf of everybody at Woman and Home, and myself, for being so honest. You're in a position of power within a public persona, and the idea that you're able to talk about these things, I think, is incredibly important, and lots of people will identify with a number of things we've talked about in the last half an hour. So thank you so much. Thank you for being an incredible cover star for us, and 100% will we be taking up again for you to be on
Oh,
the cover.
that's
Thank you
that's
so
great
much.
news. I loved it, and thank you for having me on this live chat, and thank you everybody for joining in and showing support and love. Enjoy the
Thank
rest of your
you.
day, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.